The NBA trade deadline is tomorrow. We'll be live throughout the deadline tomorrow, so be sure to join us for that one. But there's several rumors kicking off today that we have to get into. Let's start with Kevin Durant. Now, originally, the Suns were looking to bring in Jimmy Butler, and they were hoping Bradley Beal would waive his no trade to facilitate the trade. Now, obviously, that hit a snag because Bradley's not going to waive his no trade. So then thoughts turned to, well, the only player that they might move besides Devin Booker would be Kevin Durant, or only other player they could move besides Beal would be Booker or Durant. So that means Kevin Durant's name got thrown around, and we've seen his name connected with the Houston Rockets, the Dallas Mavericks, the Miami Heat, and now the Golden State Warriors. The latest says that Golden State is no longer in the running because Kevin Durant is not interested in joining the Warriors. Doesn't see them as a contending team anymore, even if he were to join the team. Big statement there from him. Now, another side of this thing is that Kevin Durant doesn't necessarily want to be traded. Usually the way this thing goes, Kevin Durant lets his feelings be known to the team that he's with, and they figure out how to get a trade done. It's just how it seems to go for Kevin Durant everywhere he's been. We saw that with Brooklyn most recently. With this trade deadline coming up, with them being unable to get Butler without trading him, I wonder if the Suns ultimately stay pat. But Kevin Durant is certainly the biggest name that remains on the trade deadline market right now. The biggest trade we've seen so far, the obvious one, Luka Doncic to the Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis, a first-round pick, and Max Christie. Christie played great yesterday anyway against the Philadelphia 76ers. Mavs have since made another trade in Caleb Martin in exchange for Quentin Grimes and a second-round pick. Dallas is now a very big team. They need some more ball handlers. They need somebody who can create their own shot. Don't be surprised if Dallas adds another scorer. They were looking for a scorer even before they traded Luka Doncic. Welcome in, Verlis, Alex, Ryan. Appreciate you joining us. Hopefully Durant gets traded to Miami. Those are the latest rumors as far as Durant as well. If Butler's not going to leave town, and there is some internal sentiment that the players want to have him back, maybe they decide to bring in Kevin Durant. Now, Durant obviously would then become the face of the team, best player on the team, all those kinds of things. I wonder if the front office, specifically Pat Riley, could get around how Butler has really treated this team for the first half of the season. I don't think so. I think there's a good chance he still gets moved, even if they brought in Kevin Durant. In fact, I think if they moved Jimmy Butler, that would be the salary ballast there instead of some of the other pieces on that roster. Maybe they find a taker for Terry Rozier, who has not played well since going to Miami. I'm sure they'd love to be rid of his deal as well. But you bring in Kevin Durant, you have Bam Adebayo. Maybe you can swing a point guard or another shooting guard type of player to kind of help out this roster, even itself out a little bit. But you already have Tyler Hero there, and maybe you just roll it out there and see how they go in the Eastern Conference. Eastern Conference to me is the weaker of the two, but they do have some of the better teams at the top, including the Celtics and Cavaliers. On the Western Conference side, they're a much deeper team, much deeper conference anyway. They go all the way to 11 deep as far as teams that could make a serious run in the postseason. By serious, I mean at least escape the first round. The East cannot boast the same thing. However, the West does not have the same talent at the top. The best would be Oklahoma City, and I see them as a very flawed team, especially when it comes to size. So we'll have to see what ultimately happens there. Ryan, LeBron to the Cavs. LeBron to feed families. I'll put it this way. LeBron has a no-trade clause. One of two players in the NBA that has that one. Bradley Beal has the other one. He chose not to waive it. Now, LeBron already has his business ventures already set up in LA. The only way I would have seen him taking, opting to go to a trade here would be if he wanted to go play with Steph Curry or if he wanted to rejoin AD and Kyrie in Dallas. I don't see either one of those as a realistic option there. I think LeBron and Luka are going to get along great there in LA. They're not going to have any defense. They have no rim protection. They will add somebody via trade, but that's something to kind of keep our eyes on as well. Sean, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us once again. Will the Grizzlies make a trade? I would expect so. Just the way they built up this roster, they kind of made a bad decision anyway with Aldama as far as the contract situation. But they got to make the most out of it while he's still there. So they're going to be limited to what they can sign him to going forward because of their decisions as far as his options. But kind of keep the Grizzlies in mind as far as a trade candidate. Let's go ahead and head over to X and just see if anything is happening at the moment. We did see a trade today. The Thunder acquired Daniel Tice and a second-round pick from the Pelicans. Pelicans basically clearing some salary space there so that they do not have to pay the tax. The Warriors, according to Mark Stein, are now shifting their focus to Jimmy Butler. Interesting move there. If the Heat had found a very difficult market to find a fit for Jimmy Butler, if Kevin Durant is really out on the possibility of going to play for the Warriors, then that makes the perfect sense for them to try to target a Jimmy Butler in return. Now, what would a trade probably look like? You're probably looking at an Andrew Wiggins, maybe a couple other low salary or higher salary, low impact pieces on that roster. Maybe a Gary Payton goes out the door and a couple other pieces. We can even do a we can even do a trade about that one as well. As far as the Warriors, they're looking to pair another superstar there with Steph Curry. Do I think Jimmy Butler's still a great player? I don't. I think he's past his prime at this point. I think we've seen the best of what Jimmy Butler has to offer. Now, his true shooting percentage still looks good, but as far as his impact on the floor, he just looks older, slower. All of that makes sense because he is an older and slower player at this point in his career, but I'm just not sure how much he has really left in the tank when it comes to the actual playing of basketball on the floor. Now, once you get into the playoffs, you'll have a day off in between as opposed to these back-to-backs. Maybe that does wear him down more than they used to. All of those are legitimate cases to be made, but I'm just not sure how much impact you're going to get. Ethan, good point there. Zion to Dallas if KD doesn't go. That's not the one player I would want out of the Pelicans. In fact, I would rather have two other players from the Pelicans. The one I'm kind of sneaky high on is Trey Murphy. I was really high on him 2 years ago before his injury. Injury happened anyway. I thought Herb Jones was a more valuable piece because of the contract and because he was available, etc. Trey Murphy's come back and really elevated his game. Not only is he just a 3-and-D guy who can defend anybody from the 1 through 4 positions, he's also a ball handler, a great shot creator now. I think over the last 3 or 4 games, he's had over 30 points in each one of those games. kind of been one of the driving forces on a Pelicans team that is not very good, especially when DeJounte Murray is out. Zion's in and out of the lineup anyway. This team is not going anywhere, and so the Pelicans I would expect to try to do something, especially with Brandon Ingram. The question is, can you convince the Pelicans to part with Trey Murphy? I think if you offer them, say, 3 first-round picks for Trey Murphy, maybe you include some salary in that deal, maybe include Daniel Gafford because you are a big team, that's a big offer for Trey Murphy. Now, I wouldn't just want Trey Murphy out of this deal. I would want both. I want Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. If I'm giving you all 3 first-round picks and Daniel Gafford, say I send Klay Thompson to Orlando, for instance, because they always need three-point shooting, some veteran leadership there. I think that would be a good fit for him. I'm sure he wouldn't like being sent to Orlando, but that's beside the point. You send him to Orlando, you send another pick from Orlando to New Orleans to make this thing kind of work out, and that's how the trade would ultimately work. And by the way, this deal would actually save the Mavs money on the cap this year, keep them beneath the tax level, which is what they really did in that Luka deal as well. That wasn't quite as reported as some of the other details of it. But interesting move as far as I'm concerned. I'll actually show you some of the deals I've come up with. And, Trey Murphy is the guy I want along with Herb Jones. Now, remember, Herb is out, I believe, till the end of the season anyway with a torn labrum, I believe. But hopefully he comes back strong next year. In either scenario here, Derek Lively's out for at least another month or so. You have to be able to handle that center position. I'd imagine they'd put Davis there until Lively gets back. Other than that, they don't really have another center that I trust with big minutes. They have Dwight Powell, but I'm not playing him 30 minutes a game next to AD. I would rather play P.J. Washington at the 4, Trey Murphy. Herb Jones eventually will be mixed into that group there. They did bring in Caleb Martin, giving them more size, more defense. Just something to kind of keep in mind there as well. But Zion, that'd be a very difficult lineup to defend, sure. You'd have Lively at the 5, AD at the 4, and Zion at the 3. I'm not sure you could handle it defensively at the 3, but certainly would be one of the most dominating forces offensively at the 3 for sure. Sean, when will I do the baseball stream? That'll be around 9 o'clock this evening. Ethan, Jimmy Butler told Golden State he doesn't want to go there. If he does, he won't re-sign. Makes sense. A lot of people are turning away from Golden State, so we'll see what happens with Jimmy Butler, KD, and the others. I don't know about that one, Ryan. That's a little harsh there, my friend. I wouldn't say he gets tossed around like that. I would say he chooses to move around the way he does. We saw how his tenure ended there in Minnesota. One of the most stick it to your team kind of moments we've seen in NBA history, where you basically challenge all of the starters to a 5-on-5 kind of mini game in practice, and basically take every single least valuable player on the team, scrub, and basically take those 4 guys and take on the starters in that team. That was Andrew Wiggins. That was Karl Anthony Towns, and they won and won definitively. That was kind of the impetus for him to leave town there. So Jimmy does kind of have a way of rubbing teams wrong. I mean, the tenure ended poorly with the Bulls. the tenure ended badly with the 76ers. A little bit less so, because a little bit surprised that they chose to go the route that they did, bringing back Tobias Harris rather than bringing back Jimmy Butler. I thought Jimmy Butler was the more valuable piece at that time. Rafe, any Mavs rumors? I might actually watch Thursday if AD plays, but that's all the excitement I have for them this year. I get the negativity around the Mavs right now after trading their best player, franchise player, for the next 15 years or so. That's kind of what you had to look forward to. The Dallas Morning News put it greatly. They put "He Was Ours" as the headline of not just the sports section, but the entire paper in Dallas. Full page picture of him, and he deserved it. He was Dallas's pick. Sure, they traded for him on draft night. I get it, but he had never suited up in another team's uniform. He looked like he was going to be the most loyal player next to Dirk that we've ever had in Dallas, and didn't look like he was looking to leave. Now, sure, there was interest from outside teams already. I know we already saw all the edits from fan bases around the NBA posting their idea for what they could have gotten for Luka before the trade even happened, and now we get even more of them after saying, hey, maybe I could have gotten a bag of potato chips in return for Luka Doncic. So Nico Harrison certainly didn't do himself any favors with the Mavericks faithful. And as far as AD, I think we should still be cheering for him. I think he's going to be one of the most talented Mavericks we've seen. Behind Dirk Nowitzki, I'd put probably Luka and AD probably in that next tier of most talented Mavericks we've ever seen. If they win a title, if Anthony Davis wins a title there with the Mavericks, he could be elevated even above Luka because Luka didn't do that here. Understandably, it's hard to see Luka go out the door, but Luka got to an NBA Finals. Would love to have seen what he could do in the future. He may very well have won one or multiple titles in the future, but we'll never know. And I encourage all Mavericks fans to kind of don't take it out on the players, don't take it out on the officials of the team. The one person who deserves your ire is Nico Harrison. So if you are one of those people that I've seen reports out there asking for refunds of your season tickets, don't take it out on the ticket rep. They didn't do this trade. Just kind of be cordial, be friendly, be polite, and just realize that while you may not be interested in going to the Mavericks games anymore because they traded Luka, they're not the one that made the decision. So kind of keep that in mind. You might want to voice your displeasure as far as, hey, can you file a complaint for me? Sure, what's your complaint? Go ahead and file a complaint against Nico Harrison for trading away the reason why you bought the tickets in the first place, Luka Doncic. So, again, just encouraging fans to be more respectful to some of their ticket reps. I've seen some of those crazy calls out there about what they ultimately say to those people. Let's take it easy on them. They didn't make the decision to trade Luka. Alrighty, Sean. I think Luke Kennard and Marcus Smart could get traded. I would say Marcus Smart would be a valuable piece here at the deadline to somebody. Not as valuable as, say, a Cam Johnson or somebody like that, but if you're looking to bring in Jimmy Butler, you're probably going to have to unload both of those deals to be able to bring him in. Ryan, when will Luka play again is the next question. February 8th. That was the target date before the trade. That's the target date after the trade. Maybe they wait another game, but it's going to be right around the 8th. So right around Saturday is when we can expect him back. Let's see. Luka comes back later this month, barring setbacks. It will be the 8th. Rafe, hear me out. Nico doesn't make it through 26, and Luka comes back after Kid talks him back into it. Ownership probably wouldn't allow it anyways, though. No, I think Luka has... I wouldn't say he's shut the door on Dallas already. I would say that he is so blinded by his seething rage for Nico Harrison and the decision to trade him. He couldn't make a decision one way or the other as far as, if he would even come back if there were changes. Now, if he does opt out of his deal and, go into free agency, you're going to have the room to be able to bring him in the first place. I'm sure he's still, friends with everybody on the team. I'm sure Jay Kidd and him get along great. Everything was kind of built to him in Dallas. Now, sure, they've made some changes over the last 4 or 5 months to kind of, encourage him to get better at his conditioning and try to harp on that a little bit more. Made no excuses for his performance in that Game 3 of the NBA Finals where he got fouled out with, I believe, like 4 or 5 minutes left. And they didn't really rush to his aid either when Brian Windhorst aired him out on national television after the game because they kind of knew what it was like. And they needed him to grow. They thought the offseason he would come in a little bit better in shape, and we did see the workout montage of him in the offseason. But he still comes in, and everybody's like, well, is he really right? Is he really in condition? And then, of course, he has the injury on the first day of camp and can't get in shape with the team. That kind of set everybody off, right from the beginning, whether it was conditioning related as far as why he had that injury, or whether it was just, a fluke, injury that always happens, in the spring training, or in the, build up to the start of the season. The Mavericks weren't giving him any leeway, weren't giving him any benefit of the doubt as far as why the injury happened. And so they blamed it on the conditioning. So they said, okay, great, we got Luka back. And then they had a quote-unquote wrist injury about a month before he went on the most recent time on the injured list to kind of get his conditioning back after missing most of the training period there to try to get him in shape, get his conditioning better. He comes back, is healthy, looks good for a few weeks, and then boom, Christmas Day goes down, and that's the last game we will ever see of Luka Doncic in a Maverick uniform, barring something like you're mentioning there. So, as far as Luka goes, do I, wish he was one of the, workout warriors that's in the gym every day, sit next to Dwight Powell every day and just try to get in shape all the time? Absolutely. But I would say that Luka, for his conditioning issues, he's still a top 4 player at worst in the NBA. In my opinion, the best offensive player in the game, unquestionably. And even with the conditioning issues, he is that good. So you're telling me, even with the conditioning issues, you could only get AD, a first, and Max Christie? That's a little bit light on a package. Now, understandably, Max Christie worked out so far. One game, but he looked good in a Mavericks uniform. But you still need to have at least gotten both of the available first-round picks. You should have at least gotten both of the pick swaps there as well. And you end up with nothing else? I mean, AD's 31 years old, is made of glass famously, but and currently is on the injured list. Will probably be back Thursday, at the very latest Saturday. But AD still makes the Mavericks a very competitive team for this year, next year, and the year after that. But the question is, how much longer will they remain competitive? Will we eventually see him move out the door? But after the trade, one good thing for the Mavericks is that AD says he's very comfortable staying in Dallas, wants to build here, and seems very happy about the possibility of playing there. All right. Bad blood with Dallas now. That bridge is burned. I would agree, honestly, unless there's some other, melding or meeting of the minds anyway with Luka. Time heals all wounds. I'm not sure it heals this one. Bill, welcome in. Mavs sold their future. They did. Let's see, Rafe, would you be happy to KD for Dallas, or would you be more happy about selling more for youth, for an older player, even if he's good? Honestly, I don't want KD because I think that just guts our roster too much. I was trying to build a trade, and I got very close to where I could make a decent one, and still keep PJ. But honestly, it just wouldn't work from a roster construction standpoint. I think in order for Phoenix to be able to accept the deal, they would demand to have PJ. They would demand to have one of the two centers. They would demand all 3 first-round picks. And for a guy who's 36 years old and is on the decline, only a couple years left on his deal. I think he's got an opt-out in there too. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think he does. But that's a hell of a lot of a package to give up for a 36-year-old player. And basically you're just building for this year and next at the very least, or at the very most. You can't really count on him playing at this level at 38. He's not LeBron. He's not built like LeBron, so I wonder how much he has left after this current deal. So that would be my only caveat there with KD. I would rather go a different direction. With De'Aaron Fox now with the Spurs, could CP3 get traded? I would bet he would get traded. They have a couple of point guards on that roster now. Castle, they brought in McLaughlin in that trade as well. They have Fox there as well. They have plenty of ball handlers. Part of that trade, though, that is expected to be on the move, the pieces that the Bulls got in return, Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, and Zach Collins, all 3 players are on the block. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if Dallas tries to get in the market for Trey Jones if they don't do something bigger. Rafe, Max looked better than I was even hoping for in his first game, to be honest. I think that could be said for everybody in a Mavericks in fandom anyway. He looked great in game 1. But Harrison wanted to send a message. True. Deadline is 22 hours. Very true. We'll be live tomorrow to cover it. We'll probably start our live around 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe 11. Depends on how the day goes. Kenny, welcome back. Been a while since I've seen you, my friend. I really need my Magic to make some kind of a move for a point guard. I could agree there. They do need somebody who can be a bit of a point guard for them, but they also need some outside shooting as far as I'm concerned. They still remain one of the league's worst teams as far as three-point shooting. They haven't really solved that issue. KCP hasn't really done anything for them in a Magic uniform. I'm sure they love his defense there. But offensively, he was at least be able to be a 3-and-D type of wing, and he hasn't really done that. Bill, do you think Owen White is a good pickup? I think he's a good pickup from a depth perspective. They also got Braden Shoemake for the Yankees. Rafe, Mavs are the worst basketball team in Texas now. I don't know about that. I would still say the Spurs are a little bit beneath them. I think the future is brighter for sure in San Antonio. Houston looks good on paper right now, but I wonder how that youth plays in the postseason. I do not have those same concerns about Dallas. So I'll still say Dallas is still the best team in Texas right now. Although on paper right now it doesn't look that way because of where their record is. But remember, they basically were without their lead guard, Luka Doncic, for about a month, and they finally make the trade. They played several games where they literally rest about 7-8 players because most of those guys were injured in the first half of the season. I'm expecting a takeoff in the second half, not quite to the level of what we saw last year, where they go on that incredible run and just look like world beaters. But I do expect a very similar streak as far as winning. Now, I'm curious to see what other scorer they're going to bring in. I do not believe that they're going to sit on their hands the rest of this trade deadline season. I'm expecting a big move. Maybe not Kevin Durant big, but maybe Cam Johnson size or Brandon Ingram size. Ingram's deal sounds like it could be coming between Atlanta and Toronto. Let's go ahead and update our page here and just see if anything else is happening at the moment. Luka doing some half-court shots with the Lakers. Just yikes. That's a tough sight to watch as a Maverick fan. All right, there's the Warriors looking there. Let's see. The Knicks are looking at trading Jericho Sims. But remember, Dallas just brought in Anthony Davis. So the only way I think they would bring in a guy like Jericho Sims would be if they traded Gafford. And I think there is a good chance of that happening here. Let's go ahead and update one more time, see if anything else is going. Caleb Martin is listed out due to trade pending. But I wouldn't be shocked if he's upgraded to questionable once it officially goes through. I would agree there. PJ Washington is out for the birth of his son. So, kind of family stuff going on there. AD, they may have him back for Thursday, but they may rest him one more game. But they are playing Boston. Mark Stein reporting the Warriors have shifted their focus to Butler from Durant. Schroeder's deal from Golden State is now available to be traded and could be part of that Butler deal. Nothing too big there. There's again the Pelicans talk about Brandon Ingram to the Hawks and Raptors. All right, let's get into some trades, guys. Let's have some fun here. This is the one thing I really wanted to do today is just have some fun on this site. So we'll start at the top. Let's go with Boston. They're the reigning champs. What could they really do? They're a second apron team. They can't really do much. They can only add small pieces around the periphery. The one name I've heard mentioned out of Boston is Drew Holiday. Now, they just traded Springer anyway to the Houston Rockets, including a second-round pick there. But I would be shocked if they made a foundational changing move like trading Drew Holiday. But if they did, I'm sure they could get a pretty penny for him. They're not going to get back a lot of salary, so that would help out their financial books. But I just don't think they did all this work to build this team just to trade Drew Holiday because of financial reasons. I just don't see that being the case. Otherwise, they probably would have traded one of Brown or Tatum because of the overlap as far as skill. They never saw the need to do that either. So I just don't think that that's the right way that they're going to go ahead and do this kind of a thing. But maybe they trade another guy at the back end of this roster to save them a little bit of second apron money. Maybe a Jordan Walsh goes out the door. Maybe a Luke Cornett or a Sam Hauser. I doubt that one, though, because I think he's a good three-point shooter for them. Xavier Tillman makes some sense as far as a guy who could go out the door. But as far as this roster, I think it's just cost-cutting. They're not going to trade any major pieces. Another team I wanted to get to, kind of the big contenders first, then we'll get into the more interesting teams, is the Oklahoma City Thunder. They just brought in Tice. Not sure if they've updated that already. Now, they still have money to spend. They can still go, up to another 9.2 before they even get to the tax. But look at where this roster is. To me, they still need more size. I'm talking, a power forwards, a bigger three, somebody like a PJ Washington is the type of player that they really need to bring in. I did not love the signing of Isaiah Hartenstein. I get it, you need a big, but $30 million over 3 years annually, that's a lot of money for a guy who I wouldn't consider one of the top 15 to 20 centers in the game. And there aren't a lot of great centers. Hartenstein's a great rebounder. He's a pretty good defender. Doesn't bring you much on the offensive end of the floor, but he's a good role man. But as far as Hartenstein goes, I think this was a miss in free agency. I thought they should have gone for more of a wing help type of a player, somebody 4 or 5 that could give them some help at that spot, maybe even go in the trade route. I mean, if AD could have been had for Luka Doncic, I wonder what assets the Thunder could have had that they could have packaged something together to bring in Anthony Davis. Maybe they're the next team that makes the big trade for a guy like Joel Embiid. Maybe they're the suitor here for a Domantas Sabonis from the Sacramento Kings. I haven't heard his name mentioned too much, but the Kings just traded De'Aaron Fox. I wouldn't be surprised if the Kings try to do a little bit of buying and selling here at the deadline. They did a little bit of a buy in that Fox deal when they brought in Zach LaVine. But I'm not sure if this roster is still going to stay together. I think that front office is going to be out of town by the end of the year. And so maybe you could lure Domantas Sabonis out of Sacramento with the right offer. Maybe you center the package around Hartenstein, give him a center back, give him a young piece, and the picks that they would need. That'd be a surprising deal, but something that would be a difference-making deal for a team like the Thunder. So kind of keep that one in mind. Let's get to some of the more fun ones. Let's look at the Los Angeles Lakers. They just acquired Luka Doncic. They're I think they're 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there as far as the standings right now. But they're in good spot right now to make it to the postseason. They don't have any size. I mean, zero. Jackson Hayes is their biggest player. Maxi Kleber's their second biggest, but he's going to be out. Honestly, I don't think he's going to make it through the deadline on this roster. So let's start with the Lakers as far as a possible trade here. So we're going to trade Maxi Kleber. You have $11 million. Remember, you can't trade him with other pieces. My favorite idea is with the Washington Wizards, and the player I would like to see them get is Jonas Valanciunas. Now, is he the right fit? Probably not, but he does give them the one biggest thing that they need, which is size. I think you'd probably have to attach a pick to this one, so they attach the second round pick. You probably would have to attach a swap to it as well, so go ahead and just imagine the swap being part of this deal going to the Wizards. But there's your center. You bring in Jonas Valanciunas, maybe even go to the very bottom of this roster and look for around that $2 million mark. Maybe you bring in an Anthony Gill or something along those lines. An older veteran player who's not making a whole lot. Johnny Flynn, maybe to mix up your guard rotation. I don't think it's going to help you any, but maybe you're just trying to take lottery tickets at that point. But the biggest thing for them is they bring in Jonas Valanciunas. They need some size. He immediately would fill a huge need for them. Jackson Hayes probably goes to the bench, give you an athletic 5 along with Jordan Vanderbilt that they can mix in there at that 5'4" spot. Vanderbilt does play bigger than his actual size, so I still would like to see them go after Jonas Valanciunas. Rafe, 6'6", 230. Luka like 270, ain't he? That was some of the reports out there. I mean, that was some of the people tongue-in-cheek saying he was 270. He's about 230, 240, 250, somewhere in there. Somewhere in the LeBron James weight class. Around 250 is what I'd imagine is what his high got up to. But as far as what the Lakers need, they need some size, and this trade would get it done. Let us know in the chat, would you make this trade if you're a fan of the Lakers? Let's go ahead and put hearts if you like the trade. Go ahead and put thumbs down if you don't like the trade. Let us know. If you're a Lakers fan, do you like the move for Jonas Valanciunas? Again, very little cost here, and you're actually getting out of a second year of Kleber's deal here as well, and you're only giving up a second-round pick and a swap. Not a bad deal at all. Now, one other move that they could make that I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to make is go for another guard. Say they went and tried to move on from Gabe Vincent. He's not exactly a terrible player for them, but he is not exactly bringing anything to the table either. One player I could see them going for to kind of make this deal even bigger is going for a Malcolm Brogdon. Now, I think you need to attach a little bit more salary to make this deal work. I know they would love to get off of the contract of Rui Hachimura. I don't think they could interest the Warriors in it, but let's say that he goes to a third team. We'll just throw him in here for salary purposes. Maybe they could convince them to part with Marvin Bagley going back to the Lakers. That deal right there, if I'm the Lakers, you get 2 bigs for your roster, one athletic big who actually likes playing with Luka. Marvin Bagley and Luka have gotten along ever since the NBA draft when they were both brought into the league. And kind of keep that in mind. Now, Brogdon would give them some backup point minutes there. And Valanciunas, of course, really helps them out at the center spot. But you're giving up Hachimura. You're giving up some of your wing depth, which I don't really like. But maybe the third team that they would spin Hachimura off to could offer up some type of a wing back in return. So, not too bad. Shams breaking news. Let's see if we got that one. We were just talking about Valanciunas. That's pretty funny. Kings will bring in Jonas Valanciunas via their exceptions. They have a new traded player exception in the trade from the Bulls and Spurs. Makes some sense. Remember, we just talked about a possible trade with the Thunder that would send Hartenstein in exchange for Sabonis. Well, I thought they would need a center, and this gets them a center. So maybe they are still trying to compete there with the Sacramento Kings anyway. They get Valanciunas. Let's see what the actual deal was. 2 seconds to Washington in exchange for Valanciunas. Denver was very much involved. Makes some sense. They were looking for any upgrades, really. Not too bad. The Jonas of Sabonis. That's funny. But yeah, interesting deal there. While we're live, we get an actual trade. Not too bad. Let's go ahead and rework the trade we were just working on. Since Valanciunas is no longer an option, delete that all out of there. We're going to go ahead and pull up another team, delete the Lakers, pull up the Lakers again. That way it resets everything for them. Now that Valanciunas is off the board, where do you go for center help? Do you go back to the Wizards and say maybe Marvin Bagley straight up for Kleber? Maybe you go to a different spot for a center. Let's say they go back. This is going to surprise some of you guys, but let's say the Lakers go back to Dallas and say, hey, we know your fans are kind of giving you a hard time about the package that you got back for Luka, but we really need a center. We would love to have Derek Lively, but we would have to give up a first, Dalton Connect, and even then I'm not sure it'd be worth enough to bring in Derek Lively. But Daniel Gafford might be available. Say they trade Daniel Gafford to the Lakers. Rim running center that you know works with Luka, defends the rim. I think that would be a pretty good one there. What would the Mavericks want in return? Well, we know they want somebody who can handle the ball. You're not getting Luka back. Sorry, Mavs fans, that ship has sailed. But you might be able to get a younger player back. Dalton Connect, I think, might be untouchable. Maybe you can convince him to part with a Jackson Hayes as far as the center replacement back to the Mavericks. I think that could be possible. But I think that's just exchanging one problem for another. The Mavs want nothing to do with Christian Wood, so that's not going to happen. What about a Jared Vanderbilt? Maybe that would be the ballast in this deal here, and then getting some picks back in return. I think it would have to be part of a bigger trade here if Dallas did something like this, kind of like what my idea is as far as the Pelicans. We'll get into that one here in just a moment. Brandon, do the Raptors buy low on BI at the deadline, flipping their expiring deals into a productive player that can resign? Possibly, but I think the Pelicans are going to want some long-term assets. We're talking guys with first-round picks. We're talking some type of younger player back in return, maybe an R.J. Barrett going back the other way. Lots of different avenues for the Raptors to improve at that wing position. Remember, they're a team that's looking to be active here at the deadline. Haven't heard too many connections with Jimmy Butler, but that's the type of player that they're looking for. Maybe BI would be a younger version of a wing player that could help them out. So keep that one in mind. Brandon, I mean, they can come get Kelly Olynyk from Toronto. I think that one's a legitimate option. Let's go ahead and do that one. Let's delete the Mavericks here and just add the Raptors. Kelly Olynyk is making 12.8. Let's just see if we can do it straight up for Maxi Kleber. Just from a salary standpoint, could it happen? Failed, and the reason being you're over by 1.8, so it doesn't look like it would work. So let's close this and retry it again. Let's throw in another salary at the back end of this deal. Remember, you can't aggregate salaries, though. That's the problem. So take out Maxi, because it's not enough. Say you put Rui Hachimura to the Raptors. Then maybe you could get a piece back out of this as well. Say you go to the back end of this roster here. Maybe you go for... I don't know if you could get Agbaji. I don't know if you could do that one. Maybe a Garrett Temple, a veteran. You could probably do that. Davion Mitchell, I don't know about that one. Might be too pricey for you. Bouchard, or Chris Boucher, I don't think you could get that one either. Let's go ahead and throw Temple in this deal. And there you go. Maybe a second-round pick to finish it off. Let's try this trade. There you go. You send Hachimura and a second-round pick for Olynyk and Temple. Would I probably do that one if I were the Lakers? Probably not. I know they don't really like the idea of having Hachimura on this team, but they need wing help. As far as the contract, I think they would like to get out from underneath that Hachimura contract. But as much as they need size, I think there's other trades that would work out better for them. Rui would make sense. Davion, you can get Temple or Davion. That's kind of what I was thinking, Brandon. Remember, guys, that hit the like button, or I'll send Mike's barber to your house today. Yeah, the barber got me. He just went. Thank you, man. Appreciate that, Bill. All right, let's close this out and kind of clean this up a little bit. Let's reset everything here. Let's do a different team, shall we? Let's go to... I know we have a lot of Mavericks fans in here, and a lot of people in Dallas are feeling the pain. But what could Dallas do? Now, they're not going to trade AD. They're probably not going to trade Kyrie Irving unless it's for a better player. I don't think they're even realistically entertaining the offer. I think Clay could be headed out the door. PJ Washington, I think they would like to hold on to unless it's for an improvement at his specific position. Talking about Kevin Durant, even though I wouldn't do that type of move. I think Daniel Gafford has got a really high trade value right now. If Lively was healthy, I think they would definitely be trading Daniel Gafford and see what they could bring back as far as an athletic four. I think with the addition of Caleb Martin, that Najee Marshall is now expendable along with Max Christie. I think both of those are going to kind of be the duplication of Marshall there. That's why we saw Grimes go out the door, because they duplicated his abilities with the addition of Max Christie. They're probably not going to trade Lively unless it's for an impact player. So I just don't think he's going to get moved unless it's for like a big, really big player. We're talking, contract control for 3-4 years. Talking about a superstar level player. I don't think they would include Lively in those type of offers. Powell, I think, is just there for salary ballast. Omax and Hardy are your two young guys that they could be moving as well. Boucher to the Mavs could make sense. I don't really think so, unless Gafford is a part of the trade that would bring him in. I just don't think there's a spot on the roster for him, at least at the moment. Chester, who do you think the Warriors are getting? Butler seems to be the guy they're targeting right now, even though he says he's not going to re-sign there. I'm not sure what that would mean for the Warriors, because they're still looking for a big-time player. So maybe they go for Brandon Ingram at this point. Maybe they go after a Vucevic. Maybe they go after a Zach LaVine. There's all kinds of options for them. But for the Warriors, I think the time has come and gone for them to acquire a major caliber player. Maybe they're going to wait until free agency next year, or the offseason anyway, and just see what Philadelphia's position is on Paul George. We saw a couple of rumors about Paul George in the overnight hours, as far as Philadelphia at least listening on offers for him, not necessarily shopping him or even taking him seriously or even responding, just that they would at least hear teams out. So that was a little bit of a surprise anyway for Paul George. Rafe, Clay heading out the door, man. We just signed him and then fed the whole team who's to the Wolves with Luka trade, kind of. But I think Clay's biggest impact on the team was as a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. With Luka being out the door, his shot creation and dribbling is going to be more important, and those are the two things that he really struggles at. Now, he had a decent game against Philadelphia, but that's not exactly the norm I'm expecting from him. Now, if they get some good ball handlers in there, somebody who can distribute a little bit better, maybe they don't have to move Clay. But I think his salary is going to be usable in trades. Do I think you're going to get a big price for him? Probably not. The Warriors need a big, but Jackson Davis isn't enough. True. Looney's too old anyway at this point, and Draymond is Draymond. Brendan Lee, you guys should have traded for Pascal last year. I heard you guys really missed out on that one. You think we really missed out on that one? I would have liked Pascal, but I don't think anybody in Dallas really liked that salary. That was the biggest problem for him, and he's not exactly a 1A, 1B type of a player. He's more of a 1C to me. He's been good in Indiana this year, and I just don't think he would have been a great fit on this roster. And it had limited the options that Dallas could have had. Like, for instance, you would have been able to make the move for Najee Marshall. P.J. Washington wouldn't be here. Daniel Gafford wouldn't be here either. I think that's the opportunity loss, and so that's why I think they went the other direction. Yes, Brendan, they should have, but that's their fault. I don't think they should have. I think they should have gone the route they did with Washington and with Gafford. I think they're in a very similar spot they would be in now, even if they had brought in Siakam. Honestly, I think they're better defensively by the additions that they made rather than bringing in Pascal Siakam, and they have the flexibility to make other moves because they went that route as well. Those contracts are very tradable, whereas Siakam, if a bigger player came about, wouldn't be as tradable either. Caleb, who says no? Dallas sends Lively to the Raptors for Quickly and Boucher. That would be Dallas. Derek Lively is more valuable to them than Quickly for sure. And Boucher doesn't exactly do a whole lot for them. Raptors hang up on you immediately, Chester. No. Derek Lively is far more valuable to Dallas than Emmanuel Quickly. I understand he's a decent player. Had a nice run with the Knicks. Has had an even better run with the Raptors. But Lively means more than anything Quickly could bring to the team. Adam, shouldn't there be a bunch of trades today, trade deadlines tomorrow? Are all GMs stupid? First, not all GMs, but sometimes they do dumb things. Deadlines create pressure. Pressure makes people either turn into diamonds or the other. But I will say there will be a bunch of trades today. Some bigger trades I would expect to try to get done today, and then a bunch of small trades tomorrow. roster clearing deals that already started today with Daniel Tice and a second round pick to the Thunder, basically allowing them to dip underneath the tax threshold there. But what could the Mavs do now that we've kind of gone through their roster? The one trade that I've been thinking of for the better part of about 2.5 years now is with the Pelicans. And I think at this point it's going to take an overwhelming offer to get this deal done. But with as bad of a year as they're having, I think that 25 pick and that 31 pick are going to be more valuable to the Pelicans than the player that I'm thinking of here. So the one I would like to see Dallas go after is Trey Murphy. Now, understandably, he's got a poison pill provision because he just signed that extension, which is why Dallas is going to want him. Now, of course, you're going to have to figure out the salaries here because of the poison pill. For instance, it's 23.4 coming in, whereas it's only 5.1 going out for the Pelicans, just with that one player. Now, it's going to have to be a 3-team deal for me. So the one team I keep coming back to is Orlando. I think they need some three-point shooting. Sorry, Clay. I'm going to send you to Orlando. That's the first piece of this deal. Second piece is going to be sending Najee Marshall back to the Pelicans. Now Remember, Pelicans are trying to stay underneath the tax, so this move alone wouldn't do it for them this year. They would still need to make add another piece to this deal for it to make some sense for them. Let's go ahead and throw in, what was it? Herb Jones, I think, was the one I was thinking of. It's going to be a big trade. Let's keep it small for starters, just so you guys can see how this really would work. All right, so you're over the tax team there. I think you could probably trade Gafford to Orlando as well. I think they could use another center, but they just signed Wendell Carter. I don't think that would work, so you can't put Gafford there. Gafford would solve a lot of problems with New Orleans, though, going forward, but he's only got 2 years left. Now, if you sent Lively there, maybe you don't have to send the picks as much. Dallas keeps Gafford. That would be one way to do it there. I don't know. I can't wait for Atlanta to get DeJounte Murray again. DeJounte Murray again? Okay. What do you think of the Kuzma trade? I thought it was a miss of a trade for the Wizards, honestly. I don't like the acquisition of Middleton for them, especially with the fact that they're going to keep him. I like that they got a former first-round pick out of the 24 draft out of it, I suppose. But I would have wanted something else. I would have rather gone for Bobby Portis, salary filler, and gotten a pick and the young player out of it. But the trade is done at this point. For the Bucks, I think it was a stroke of genius. Save a little bit of money with Middleton going out, who looks like he doesn't have much left in the tank at all. And you don't have to give up a pick in the deal. Hats off to the Bucks for being able to swing that one. Kuzma is a much younger player, a much healthier player as well. But he has learned a lot of bad habits there in Washington. We'll see if he can unlearn those playing on a contending team again. I truly hope the Lakers don't trade Reeves. I don't think they're going to. I think they've got the pieces on that roster right now to where they could add a center without having to do so. But let's finish up this trade here. All right. I don't like going to the 4 and 5 team trades because those are so rare in the NBA. It's not really realistic. I know these trade simulators give you the idea that you can do that. And I know some trades might expand to that as they try to piece these. I bring in 3 assets from one team and then I split one of those off to another. There might be some of that we see on deadline day. That is just basically 2 trades combined into one rather than just 2 separate trades. But very rarely do you see a trade built with 3 to 4 to 5 teams involved from top to bottom. It's usually just a couple of different trades linked together because then you want to peddle another piece to another team to make the salaries work. That's usually how they work. So whenever you guys post these on Fanspo and other sites, when I see 5 teams, I look at them like, really now? I like to live in reality, and very rarely, like I said, do we see 3, 4, 5 team trades. 3-teamers are decently available. 4-teamers are very rare. 5-teamers are almost never seen. So kind of keep that in mind when you're coming up with your trade ideas. You're not going to get this one piece from one team and another piece from another team and another piece from another. I think a trade like this, at most, would probably include 3 teams. So let's go ahead and wrap up this deal and just see what it would have to look like. Let's go ahead and say, I guess I'll expand it. Well, do I have to do that yet? Javonte Green could go out the door. Defense to the Magic. Zion could go out the door. Brendan Ingram could go out the door. Let me remove him from the trade. Then we remove him from the trade as well. So you trade Klay Thompson. You trade the pick in 25 to the Pelicans. You trade the 29 first that you just got in the Luka deal. What the heck? I'll go ahead and do the big trade for you guys. You send Herb Jones to Dallas. Where are you, Herb Jones? You send Najee over to the Pelicans to make the salaries work. They send a young player from Orlando, Jet Howard. Incoming 13, so they stay beneath the tax threshold, which is what Pelicans want to do. They get the first round picks. I think they would probably get another pick or two from Orlando. Let's say they get the Memphis pick and then a second rounder from Orlando. So Orlando's basically trading a couple of second round picks so far, along with Jet Howard for Klay Thompson. I think you probably have to give up another second rounder here. Let's say they send another second rounder from Boston because it's got no trade value to Dallas, just so that they can have a pick coming back in for trade purposes for future ammunition. I still don't think this is enough from Dallas's perspective, though. I think they would have to include Daniel Gafford in this trade to the Pelicans. And at that point, I think they're over what they would be getting here. So this trade might have to be part of a trade with Brandon Ingram. Let's go ahead and take out Najee Marshall. You leave Brandon Ingram in there. Or you leave Gafford in there. I think you stay just underneath you're just over the tax now with this trade. So maybe you go to the bottom of this roster, and like I said, you trade off a piece. Javonte Green goes to the Magic. Magic get Javonte Green, Klay Thompson. They lose 3 second-round picks and a young player. I think they'd probably have to give up another second-round pick to the Pelicans for the Magic side of this thing. All right, so there's your trade. Klay Thompson goes to Orlando, along with Javonte Green. Just looking at the Orlando side of this thing, they're giving up 4 seconds to bring in Klay and Javonte Green and a young player in Jet Howard. Not bad. I think Klay Thompson's not exactly a negative asset, but he's very close to becoming one if that contract becomes an albatross by the end of the season. I think it already looks negative right now as far as in the Mavericks side because he's no longer going to be as good because Luka's no longer there. I still think Orlando would still need to target a point guard, which is what I would do with probably KCP. Once you bring in Klay Thompson, I think he would become available to see if you can trade him for a point guard, maybe a Lonzo Ball type of a player. Not exactly exciting, but maybe it'd help you out just enough. As far as the Pelicans side of things, you're giving up an injured player in Herb Jones, who's on a great contract, but he's injured, probably out through the rest of the regular season. You're giving up an expiring deal in Green for basically a second-round pick. You're giving up Trey Murphy, which you're giving up you're getting Daniel Gafford and 3 picks for, and also making up for Herb Jones in that one as well. So basically, you're getting 4 premium assets and some second-round picks for basically 2 premium assets there. I'm on the fence if I would accept that one if I'm New Orleans. I probably would, because you don't know how Herb Jones is going to turn out. You need to change this culture a little bit. And having another pick in 25 would be great. 25 is supposed to be a good draft. That 2031 pick now for Dallas looks incredibly valuable, because that could be a very high lottery pick. Imagine with Luka Doncic now out of the picture, the future of the franchise is basically gone. AD, even if he does stick around, say he plays 6 more years in Dallas, which is about what it would take to get to 2031. That puts him at 38 years old. That puts Kyrie Irving in that same window. That pick should be a pretty good one. As far as Daniel Gafford, 2 years on the deal anyway. 1 year left after this year. They get the second-round picks here. Not a bad deal overall. You are giving up a very good contract in Herb Jones. You are giving up a very good player in Trey Murphy. But to get those 3 picks, you have to give to get. maybe they want to reset this organization. That would be one way to do it. Not too bad. Not too bad. Let's go ahead and head over to X and just see if anything is happening real quick. Nothing there. There's still the Jonas Valanciunas fallout there. Bill, Cam Johnson to the Warriors for 2 firsts to help Steph out and finish on a high note. Wouldn't be a bad option. I really like Cam Johnson. Pretty good defender. True shooting numbers are really high as well. So that's another player I have circled if I'm a Mavs fan as well. If you don't get Trey Murphy, because I don't think he's available, you're going to have to convince the Pelicans to be able to give him up. But Cam Johnson has been available on the market for the better part of a month. But he's playing his way into a long-term future there with Brooklyn. There is some belief within the industry that he is unlikely to be traded, but it's a good name to kind of keep in mind as well. Effett Clay for Terrence Mann. I would love Terrence Mann, but I don't think the Clippers would do that deal. But what if they trade Reeves for a big? I think Reeves has too much value to get just thrown into a deal for a, quote, big. Now, if you're getting an impact big, say like a Lively or a Gafford or somebody that's a top 20 big in the game as far as a center, then I think there'd be a conversation to be had about it. But I still think Reeves is far too valuable for the future of that team, and I still want to see how those players play together. I think if you're going to make a trade for a big, you're going to use some of the contracts at the back end of that roster, Kleba, players like that who aren't going to get a lot of playing time this year, to try to bring in a low-cost option at center. Just like Valanciunas just went for a couple of second-round picks and a young player, maybe that's the return that you could expect from the Lakers in return for a big. So kind of keep that in mind as well. Let's finish up our trade here and just kind of get this one across the board and just see what we can do beyond that one. Let's see here. Flip this one back over. Let's try the trade and just see how close we are to start. Orlando is the only reason they have to cut $5 million from their intake. Mavericks just barely make it. Mavericks this year would save quite a penny towards their numbers, though. Okay, let's adjust the trade a little bit. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to piggyback a second trade onto this one. And we're going to do, let's see here. Ingram would be the second trade. Raptors come to mind. Hawks come to mind. I like the idea of Sacramento as well, but they just made the acquisition of Valanciunas. That would be my fit for Gafford. Tried that trade last night. That one worked pretty well. But now that they made the move for Valanciunas, they don't need a Gafford. Who could be the fourth team? Say for a Daniel Gafford piece. Maybe sending a first-round pick in exchange for Gafford. Who do you guys think needs a big? I know the Lakers need one. They could obviously trade a pick. Honestly, that wouldn't be a bad idea either. Let's go ahead and do that one. Say the Lakers link up on another trade. Build on that connection they speak so famously about between Nico and Rob Pelinka. Ugh. But let's kind of build off of that one. Let's go ahead and send Gafford instead of to the Pelicans. We send him to the Lakers. They need their big anyway. You're not going to be able to send Kleba out the door, but Hachimura could at least solve their wing problems that they would be deficient at the wing anyway in New Orleans. So let's go ahead and do that deal. Now you have $22 million coming in. You're probably going to need to send another player out the door to make this salaries work. Nobody really makes sense on the back half of that deal. So maybe instead of Jet Howard, you take him out of this deal anyway. Bring him back over. The Magic would give up. Do they have a big that they could lose? Wagner possibly. Wagner for Kleba. If they're not getting a big back, I don't think they would give him up. Gary Harris as a defender maybe makes some sense. We could do that one. Harris to the Lakers, along with Gafford. So you're bringing in $20 million. You're sending out 17 with Hachimura. They need a point guard anyway, so you send them Gabe Vincent. Not that he's going to do anything for them, but does give another guard to utilize. Then you have another couple million that you can add to this trade here. Meanwhile, they're going to have to give up some salaries here. So who could they give up here? No, I don't think it makes sense. Take the Lakers out. You guys had mentioned the Raptors, Phoenix. We could do something like that one. Let's see here. You can't trade consecutive years of first-round picks. I'm a basketball noob. Correct, you cannot. Let's go ahead and do the Raptors since you guys mentioned that one. Not sure how this trade would be built, but let's try to build it. So the point is to get Gafford to another team. So if you're looking at a Gafford fit, out of those clubs, you're probably looking at the Pelicans, probably the biggest fit. I mean, they already have Pirtle there in Toronto. They don't need another big. So that doesn't really fit the need of this requirement here. What other piece could they take? Another wing? A Brandon Ingram? Cap this deal off with Brandon Ingram? Maybe. So you send him there. You send Bruce Brown. You send... I think if you're trading Gafford, then you could possibly deal for Boucher. Or Boucher, anyway. Nobody else at the back end of this roster looks very enticing, aside from A.J. Lawson. I liked watching him with the Mavs last year. At the top of the roster, the one player that would interest me is R.J. Barrett, but I'm not over the top thrilled if we were the Mavs trying to bring him in. Okay. So let's see what we got here. Jett Howard then would have the ability to go back over to the Pelicans. You'd probably be able to get a first-round pick, probably top 10 protected, to go to the Pelicans for BI, and maybe a couple of seconds just to round out the deal. I think we're getting too many picks going to the Pelicans in this deal. That's 9 picks. I think we need to trim this up a little bit. They're basically picking up 5 seconds, a first, top 10 protected, 3 firsts, essentially. This is way too big of a deal for it to be realistic. Let's scrap it and start from scratch. All right, Mark, you said a Phoenix trade. Let's go ahead and do a KD one. We haven't done one for KD yet. Now, he says he doesn't want to be traded, but we shall see. For those of you wondering what the Mavs would have to do to be able to bring him in, I know they're one of the teams that's still, quote-unquote, a fit for him. You definitely would look at... Let me clear this off real quick as well. I like when they're actually in order. Okay, so you'd have to include Clay. Gafford would have to go just for salary purposes. Najee Marshall, Dwight Powell, and Omax. That gets you to about 44. And then you send KD back the other way. Now you're well above the first apron. You're just underneath the second apron here with this deal. But look at how many players are off of your roster. You're trading 3 rotation pieces for Kevin Durant. Now it is Kevin Durant. You're mortgaging your future. You'd have to attach all 3 first-rounders in this deal. Let's try the trade and just see if it says we can do it. It says that we are over the incoming amount by $6 million. Hard capped at the first apron. So I need to cut about $6 million or so. So $6 million is what we'd still have to add to this trade. close it, and let's see what else we'd have to do. I'm trying to keep from trading P.J. Washington in this deal. So if you were to try to do that, you'd have to include Hardy, Exum, and then you're still not quite there. I think you'd have to include P.J. Washington to the Suns. You take out Najee Marshall. Let's see how close we get. There you go. So you trade 2 starters, probably 3, a bench guy, and a young player, along with the 3 first-round picks that I mentioned for KD. That's the reason why Dallas does not do this trade. Plus, they're back over the tax after this deal. I don't really like the idea of including P.J. Washington in this deal. I mean, for me, if you're giving up the 3 picks, I would try to do it without including P.J. Washington, and there's no real way to get there to do it. Now, of course, they're all in to try to make it to a championship this year. KD certainly is still a great player, but I would just still be hesitant to do so for this type of move. Now, remember, the timeline for the Mavericks right now is Nico Harrison's timeline. He wants to win now on Nico's timeline. So while the future for Luka Doncic was much brighter than bringing in AD and Max Christie in a first, obviously that future didn't matter to Nico Harrison. Same thing I would imagine is going to be said here by Nico when he trades away P.J. Washington for KD. Look, we've got AD, we've got Kyrie, the time to win is now, so that's why we make the move. So I wouldn't do it, but Nico probably does. I don't like the trade, though. Look how many pieces you're having to give up to get that trade done. That's why I don't like this type of a trade. All right, let me clear this one out. Why does Gafford feel older than 26? Because he kind of plays an old school style of ball. All right, let's take out the Suns. Take out the Mavs. Let me go back to the Mavericks because there's one other trade I wanted to do that kind of popped into my head the other day. Now with them going after Valanciunas, I don't think it's a legitimate option. But the Kings, Malik Monk, I thought could have been a great guard for the Mavericks to go after. Not that he helps on the defensive end, but it would be a great ball handler, great distributor with the basketball this year. His assists are at 5.8. I think most of you guys would be surprised to know that. But he would have been a player I could have seen the Mavericks trying to target here. I just kind of wanted to mention his name just in case the Kings decide to do something different here at the deadline. I think they're kind of all over the place with what they've done so far, but we'll have to see what the rest of the trade deadline holds. Let's head back over to X before we do another trade and just see if anything else is going on at the moment. Embiid ruled out for Wednesday. Yes, we kind of saw that one. Back-to-backs, etc. Contrary to reports, was not traded yesterday. Dallas Morning News asking price a bag of stale chips deemed too steep. Apron concerns couldn't absorb your salary tax implications. That's pretty funny. In case you need a recap of everything that's gone down, all right. Conspiracy series and the Jonas Valanciunas trade. Okay, back over to the trade machine here. Where do you think Marcus Smart gets traded to? I think if they get Butler, he would go to Miami. I think if they're in there for BI, I think he goes to the Pelicans. Those would be the 2 teams I would keep an eye out there for you, Sean, for Marcus Smart. I know the Mavericks are trying to add another scorer, so I was trying to think of what other scorers are out there that they would have interest in. Think of the athleticism that they targeted in previous years with Gafford and with Washington. Think of the connections to Nico Harrison as far as players that they might be interested in. So let's kind of go through some of these teams and look at some of their trade assets to what could be on the horizon. The Knicks are looking for a center. They've already been connected to Daniel Gafford. What could they have to trade? Well, Anunoby hasn't worked out great since they made the move, but I don't think they'd trade him away for a Daniel Gafford. You ain't getting Jalen Brunson back. Josh Hart might be the one piece that's expendable along with Mitchell Robinson. I don't think the Mavs would do it for Robinson, and Hart I think is too valuable to their rotation. I don't think there's a fit there. But I would see the Knicks looking for a center here before the deadline for some help. The Hawks, they're looking for BI to kind of come in there and help them compete now that Jalen Johnson's gone down for the year. Maybe they could deal a guy like Bogdan Bogdanovic. We've heard his name in trade rumors for about the last 3 years. DeAndre Hunter also in those rumors for Brandon Ingram. Those could be a fit there for Dallas if they try to add another wing player. So kind of keep those names in mind. But as far as a ball handler, somebody who's a point guard that could come about, And let's go to the Chicago Bulls. There's two names I want to point some attention to. First, Lonzo Ball. His shooting numbers are not great. Dallas is said to be looking for a scorer. The only way this would be considered a good move for Dallas is his ball handling and passing. He's a decent defender. Injuries have taken their toll, though. But as far as the offense, it's way, way down. True shooting is down through the floor. Two-point shooting is through the floor. Three-point shooting is through the floor. He still has some potential and could still rebound from having those injuries. But that's a big risk at $20 million on an expiring deal. The other two players that kind of draw your eye are Kevin Huerter, as well as Kobe White. And the third one, I forgot to mention this one, is Trey Jones. $9.1 million expiring deal. Good passer of the ball. Not exactly a scorer, though. I don't think he really fits the timeline for Dallas as far as a win-now team. I think this would just be a move to help them out as far as a distributor to try to get a slight improvement over Spencer Dinwiddie, in which case I'd still rather have the shot-making ability of Spencer Dinwiddie than the playmaking ability of Trey Jones. Now, Kobe White, a little bit more interesting, a lot better scorer. You're going to have to give to get in this scenario, though. So if you're going to get Kobe White, you're probably going to have to part with one of those picks. And I don't think he's necessarily worth that pick to Dallas to bring him in. I think he hurts the defense a little too much, and I think the spacing on the floor would be hurt by bringing him in. So I don't think they go that route. But that's just another team to kind of keep in mind that we could see Dallas going for a trade with. I know I keep focusing on Dallas here, but the trade of Luka Doncic, I think, really kind of rocked the industry. And I think it goes without saying that Dallas is looking to kind of replace some of the void left by Luka in that offense, and they need to bring in some type of a scoring guard, some type of a scoring wing. That's why, for me, the best asset that I would be trying to go after is not Brandon Ingram, but Trey Murphy from the Pelicans. He's a bigger wing who can play some guard positions for you, guard 1 through 4 in a lineup, a lot better defensively than Luka, and he has the ability to put the ball in the basket. He's scored over 30 points, I believe, in 4 straight games, gotten over 40 as well in a couple of those. He is a very well-polished player at this point, and I think he could be a younger player that this roster desperately needs after trading away their future in Luka Doncic. They could get him for, say, probably a couple of first-round picks, and a decent asset as well as far as a position player. I think that'd be the least that the Pelicans would take, but it might take a little bit more to convince them to get rid of him. Maybe you have to throw in Najee Marshall as well into that deal. Let's go ahead and focus on another team, like the Butler deal for Miami before we head off here. If there's any other big trades, we will keep you guys informed on those. But let's go to Miami. Jimmy Butler making $48.7. I want to pull up the Suns first because that's been the most commonly mentioned team. Now, the one thing I will mention, Bradley Beal, the easiest trade fit here. Heat don't want him anyway, but he's not able to be traded there because Beal doesn't want to be traded, period. So what does that mean? If you're a second apron team, you have to have a bigger salary to trade for a smaller salary. You can't add up different salaries to try to add up to Jimmy Butler's deal. So that means Durant is probably going to have to be the one out the door, or Devin Booker. You're not trading Devin Booker, and if you're trading Kevin Durant, why are you bringing in Jimmy Butler? It just doesn't make sense. That's why some of the teams that are still in there for him, the Warriors, teams like the Grizzlies, teams like the Raptors to a lesser degree, teams like the Atlanta Hawks, all are probably better fits for Jimmy Butler at this point. But Miami's found it very hard to find a great trade fit, so no surprise there. Sean, if Bregman signing happens, will I go live to talk about it? Yes, I will. Anthony, Michael, do you think Jimmy for KD actually happens? And where do you think where do I think Bradley Beal lands? I don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think Bradley Beal's going to waive that no trade. What's his incentive? To not be ridiculed by the fan base? That's not an incentive. He made the agreement to play for this super team. They built the super team. They figured out how to add a point guard to this team, but their decision at center was very costly in Nurkic. One of the worst moves that they've made since they brought this group together. And while Beal has not played great, even by his own admission, he's still averaging about 17 a game for you. His future doesn't exactly look bright there in Phoenix, but understandably, if you were in his shoes, would you take a trade to what has been a dwindling, less improving situation there in Miami? Would you be willing to move your family once again after you said you wanted to stay in Washington for years and years and years, and you finally acquiesced and said, hey, I want to join KD, I want to join Devin Booker, and this is the team he chose to play for, and he earned the right to get that no trade, and he's going to exercise it. So no, I don't think Bradley Beal is going to be moved, And as a result, I don't think Kevin Durant and Jimmy Butler will be on the same team there. Sean, could Draymond get traded? That's part of the rumors that we heard around KD. That's not happening. If they were to do a trade with, say, Jimmy Butler going to Golden State, let's go ahead and do that one to kind of show you where the salaries are for Golden State. Remember, Dennis Schroeder is now available to be traded after being acquired from Brooklyn earlier this year. Let's say Jimmy goes to the Warriors. Now, you're probably going to include Andrew Wiggins as the centerpiece of this deal. Draymond would have had to have probably been in there. Otherwise, Gary Payton and another piece. But let's go ahead and say they send the expiring deal of Schroeder in this deal back. Now, already you're around $9 million short. So you could include Kyle Anderson. I think that would be a decent option for them to throw in this deal as well. Then let's go to the bottom of this roster here. I think Josh Richardson could be a piece that goes back to the Warriors there. Kind of the replacement in the lineup for Kyle Anderson. And then maybe a point or just another three-point shooter in Alec Burks. Makes some sense. And there's your deal. Heat save a little bit of money. They're still above the first apron, so they may want to cut a little bit more salary. Let's say they want to offload Terry Rozier in this deal as well, because that experience has not worked out very well. Let's take out Burks. Let's throw in GP. And let's see where the salaries are at. Now, they're under the floor. They've still got quite a bit of salary, though. You might have to include Draymond in this deal to get that deal done. I don't think you could do it including Terry Rozier. Let's take him back out. Let's put Burks back in. Your deal still looks pretty good. Take out Peyton. Say you take out Anderson because you don't want the salary. Instead, you bring back Kevon Looney. I don't think you'd be able to get picks and Kuminga in this deal as well. Just kind of something to kind of keep in mind there. Your 2.1. Who's another player that they might be looking to get off of here? Maybe you trade them Highsmith in exchange for Gary Payton, an expiring deal. That doesn't make sense. That's more money. Undo that one. Who's around that $8 million mark? They don't really have anybody. If they included Highsmith to the Warriors, saves them $3 million. You could throw in another $2 million salary. Say a Waters. Gets you just underneath the first apron if you're Miami. You throw in a pick. Say you throw in the 25 first. Try this trade. Failed. How close are we? Hard capped 4.4. So yeah, you're not going to be able to get under the cap as well with this deal. So let's kind of clean up this trade a little bit. Take out Highsmith. Take out Waters. Go back over to the roster. Let's see how close we are after that one. 1.4 now. So you send a young player there, just kind of even out the salaries. Now let's try the trade. There we go. So there's your Jimmy Butler to Golden State trade there. Do I think this would be a great trade for the Golden State Warriors? No, I do not. I think the Golden State Warriors are past their contending window here. Let's see here. KD to the Knicks coming. That would be interesting there, David. Welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. Let's see here. So you think the Heat screwed up the whole situation with Jimmy, or Jimmy screwed up his own trade value by complaining? I just don't think Jimmy's a great player anymore. I just don't. His true shooting percentages look great. That's the only thing that still looks good. Defense is still there as far as the competitive spirit, but the body is beginning to fail Jimmy. He's kind of a slow-mo player, kind of like Luka, but Luka just knows how to utilize his body and get in the right positions, whereas Jimmy is always putting up contested shots after contested shots, and he's getting them to fall. Don't get me wrong, but I think those buckets get extraordinarily tougher to make once you get to playoff basketball and defenses really start to hone in on him. He's just a slower player at this point, and I think he's lost a step or three over the last few years. Do I still think he's a good player? I do. Do I think he's a difference-making player anymore at the level that he was when he was at his prime with the Bulls or with the Timberwolves? I don't think he's there anymore. And as far as the Warriors looking for a second star, appear to put next to Steph Curry, I don't think he's in that same peer group any longer. Is there any young guys on the Golden State roster that they're willing to trade? There are a few. Moses Moody, I'm sure, could be had in the right move. Kuminga could probably be had in the KD trade. Rafe, I just had a whole history lesson on the aprons because I really don't know what the aprons were, and I gotta say I don't like it. I will say the aprons are kind of a unique way for basketball to curb some team spending. I wouldn't be surprised if baseball looked to do something similar as well. How about Kevin Love? I don't think he would be a part of that trade. I think he would have to... You'd have to ask Kevin Love to be willing to go to that type of a trade. I think it's just respecting a veteran player on the roster. Now, might he accept a deal to the Golden State? Sure. But I think he enjoys playing there in Miami. The original Snoop, welcome in. Zach Collins and Taylor Horton-Tucker to the Rockets for Jeff Green, Jock Landale in 2 seconds. Interesting. Let me see if that actually happened or not. Or is this just your idea? Nothing there. Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry are available, and Paul George has been upgraded to questionable for tonight's game against Miami per the Sixers. Interesting. Lowry, a veteran point guard. Eric Gordon, a good three-point shooter. And the Sixers making them questionable. They've been using that questionable tag in relation to trade discussion. So kind of an interesting thing there. Let's go ahead and look at Paul George real quick. Let's go ahead and reset this trade here. If Paul George is available, he's making $49 million over 4 years. He's only 34 years old, a little bit younger than KD. I'd still be hesitant to trade him to trade PJ Washington in this deal, but he'd be the type of player I could see Dallas trying to get their toes in on this one. While Philadelphia is trying to get out from underneath the deal before it really goes bad. But say you trade Paul George to the Mavericks. Say Clay goes to the 76ers. Gafford goes there, or at least is rerouted to another team, just to kind of show salaries for just a second. Najee Marshall to be part of this one, and Dwight Powell for salary purposes. How close are we? They stay just underneath the tax there if you're Philadelphia. You're over the apron there. You still need to trim probably $7 million off the first apron. $7 million. You'd still have to include Omax. You'd probably have to include Hardy. Just from a salary perspective, how close are they then? Still fails. $2.4 million too much. So you'd still have to include PJ Washington. I wouldn't do this trade either. Now the other two pieces, Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry. Lowry's lost a step, but maybe Dallas could utilize him as a ball handler. Remember, we talked about them looking to bring one in. So as far as their salary, Eric Gordon is making the minimum. Kyle Lowry also making the minimum. Any team could acquire those two fairly easily. Just an idea? Okay. But let's discuss your idea there. Zach Collins and Horton Tucker to the Rockets for Green and Landale in 2 seconds. It doesn't really move the needle either way for me. It'd be good for the Bulls because they would be getting a couple of assets out of it in those 2 seconds. Now for the Rockets, I'd rather have the veteran leadership of Jeff Green going into a playoff series rather than Zach Collins. I think they could use an upgrade at backup center there in Houston. There has been some rumblings about a connection there with Gafford. I know a lot of the Mavericks rumors keep coming up, but I keep hearing the Mavericks in on so many different things right now after the trade for Luka. I wouldn't be surprised if they went in any number of different directions. If they add some pieces or sold some pieces, I think Dallas is going to be one of the action teams of this deadline as well. Can you do a 4-team trade? Phoenix, Miami, Detroit, and Golden State? Possibly. You feel like Bregman signing is close? Right there with you, Sean. Let's see here. I feel like 49 million for a point guard is insane, in my opinion. I would agree. Or for PG anyway, it's insane. I would agree there. All right, so as far as what we could do as far as a 4-team deal, let's go ahead and clear this one out. You mentioned you wanted to do Phoenix, Miami, Detroit, and Golden State. Well, let's see what we can do. Phoenix, Miami, Detroit, and Golden State. So I assume Jimmy Butler would be a part of this deal. Say you send him to the Warriors. Say you send KD, because he's unwilling to trade his no trade clause, Bradley Beal that is, to the Miami Heat. I still don't like it, but that's be the starting framework of your deal. Detroit could be there for salary ballast in this trade. Phoenix, you're not really getting any assets, but you're giving up Kevin Durant. You're going to want Kuminga. If you're giving up if you're getting Jimmy Butler, are you willing to give up Kuminga for Jimmy Butler? Probably not, but that would have to be the asset that goes. So Kuminga would go to the Suns. Wiggins would go to the Suns. Probably a center as well. You're not going to get Durant. Maybe you go for Isaiah Stewart. I don't really consider him a center, though. At least a center with size. He has the physical mass to be a center, but I would prefer somebody a little different if I were in their shoes. None of these centers really fit what they're needing, though. Nurkic would have to go somewhere. So let's send him to the Pistons. Let's send Stewart to the Suns. All right, now there's kind of the starting points of our trade. So what else would we need to do? Well, the Warriors would need more assets back. Pistons would need more back. Heat are still getting a heck of a bargain by trading away Jimmy Butler and bringing in Durant, so they would have to give up more assets. So what good assets do they have that they could trade? Jaquez could be traded. Let's say they trade him to the Warriors, perhaps. This trade just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You're going to have way too many pieces moving in this one. We tried to do a 4-team trade there for you, my friend, but it just doesn't make sense as far as the teams involved. Anthony, sorry about that one. Let's go ahead and clear our trade here and catch up on a few of these other comments. Silly question considering the Luka trade, but who do you think is the most untouchable player for the Mavs until 26? Probably Anthony Davis. Because I think pretty much everybody else on the roster to some level could be had for one reason or another. Do a Grizzlies mark? We'll go ahead and do that one for you, Sean. Who are the top backup centers out there for teams like the Rockets and Lakers? I'm sure the Mavericks are dangling Gafford in talks. I know Jericho Sims is available from the Knicks. Valanciunas would have been one. Maybe Marvin Bagley, I guess, would be guy. Nurkic is available from the Suns, but I wouldn't want any part of him if I was the Lakers or the Rockets. But you need size at some point, so maybe you offload Hachimura to the Suns in exchange for Nurkic just to get you a center. Bad contract for bad contract swap. And then immediately the Suns would once again need a center as well. Anthony, send Jaden Ivey from Detroit to Miami for Rozier because Detroit says they want to add a veteran point guard as a mentor to Cunningham. You're not trading Jaden Ivey for Terry Rozier. I get it, veteran point guard, etc. Rozier is not a positive asset down there in Miami. He was a good player for a period of time with Charlotte, has not worked out there down in Miami. But as far as Ivey, that'd be a great get for Miami, but there's no way you're getting him for Terry Rozier. You would need to add probably a first-round pick to that trade there for Jaden Ivey, maybe even additional assets on top of that. Is that why you don't see massive trades like a ton in the NBA, like you do, like they're more in baseball and possibly hockey? Yes, but it's more of the fact that it's harder to get GMs on the phone for this level of a move. So these things are better done in the off season when you're doing a bigger deal like this. That's why when you see a 3, 4, 5 team deal, it's usually just two independent trades sandwiched together because there's different assets that are being traded in another deal as well. That's how you usually get the mega deals. That's why I think we saw a 6 or 17 deal officially is how it went down, but really it was 3 trades cobbled together. The Klay Thompson deal. This off season anyway. Rafe, Wizards have a lot of aging, expensive guys on last year of contracts. What would you do if you were them? Trade them for longer term contracts that are bad deals and see if I can get assets in return. The 25 draft is a pretty good one, so I'd be trying to get assets in that draft, as many as I could. Mavericks are known to be willing to trade that 25 pick if it's a piece that makes sense. So maybe you trade that 25 pick along with a negative or at least not a great asset like Klay Thompson, and send the contract to whoever. Send another bad deal to another team like the Wizards here, and make the deal work from there. But that would be one way to kind of utilize the Wizards this trade deadline season. One team we haven't really talked about a lot that I think is going to be fairly active. You're saying reports of KD to the Lakers? Really? I have not heard anything about that one. Per Sleeping NBA? I don't know who Sleeping NBA is. I have no idea who this is. No. That's a catfish thing. No thank you. Alright, so let's just see what it would take if, say, the Lakers did decide to do something crazy like that, just for curiosity's sake, because I'm wondering if they could find enough contracts to cobble together to do so. Remember, they can't trade Kleba. If they could, I think they could get there, or at least get close. Hachimura to the Suns. Reeves would have to go. Vincent would have to go. Vanderbilt would have to go. Connect would have to go. There you are. For Durant. You trade the first round pick at the end. But again, I don't think the assets are nearly there for the Lakers to be able to bring him in. It'd have to be KD saying, hey, I want to go play for the Lakers. And then the Lakers saying, hey, we'll give you our last first-round pick that we have to trade along with the swaps. I don't think it's a great deal for the Lakers. I don't think it's a great deal for the Suns either. Mark had to mention, since Bregman is mentioned, rumor Houston wants to re-sign Bregman, would trade Valdez to the Orioles for Kierstead and Beavers. It would stop criticizing Elias if he does it. I would agree. I think Valdez to the Orioles would help out that rotation quite a bit. Let's kind of check that one out. I know we're doing the NBA live right now, but we'll be doing our MLB one here shortly. Let's pull up my lists here. I do not see the rumors there that you're referencing there, Mark, but as far as the thought process there, makes some sense there anyway. As far as bringing back Bregman, helping out their offense, Kierstead and Beavers would help out their offense as well. Valdez, trading him away would save them some money if they really believe in these young guys. Just going ahead and committing to it and allowing that money to be spent on Bregman now, and just trying to build more of an offense-first team. That's one way to do it there in Houston. Now, as far as the Orioles, Kierstead and Beavers for Valdez, I think would actually be a pretty great deal for them because, again, they need a number one. But, again, it's a one-year guy, a guy that's headed towards free agency. I'm not sure if I would think that's a great move for them. Do you think there are any good potential buyout options? I think there'll be plenty. Let's look at some of the worst teams that are out there as far as, buyout guys. Let's look at a team like, say, the Jazz. We'll start there. Looking at the back end of this roster are guys that have 1 year left on this deal. PJ Tucker would be a guy that I could see as a buyout guy. Nobody else really fits there. Wizards. Brogdon, if he's not traded, I think could be a buyout guy. Bagley, same thing. Johnny Davis isn't good enough to be a buyout guy. That's kind of your Wizards. Let's look at the Hornets. Is it Seth Curry? No, he's got 2 years. Interesting. Trey Mann is injured, out for the year. You're not getting him. Nobody else really makes sense out of this group here. Let's see, who else? The Nets. I think the Nets have a fair amount of guys that are on expiring deals. D'Angelo Russell, if he's not traded, could be one. Melton's injured. Otherwise, I think he could be. Cam Thomas could sign an extension there in Brooklyn. Not too many on the back end of that roster there. Ben Simmons could be a buyout candidate. Bogdanovich could be a buyout guy. Let's look at the Raptors. Do they have any buyout personnel that they might be able to get rid of? Garrett Temple makes some sense. Nobody else really on this roster. Let's go to the Western Conference. Look at the Pelicans. They don't really have a lot that they can get rid of. Javonte Green, if they don't find a taker for him. Either that or try to sign him to an extension, one of the two. Trailblazers. I think Matisse Thybulle is an interesting trade candidate, not for buyouts. Nobody else really makes sense here on this list. Let's look at the Spurs. Chris Paul could be if he's not traded. Jordan McLaughlin, I think, could be a buyout guy. Do I think he'd be valuable in the buyout market? Probably not. Nets kind of look rough, too. I would agree there. Let's go ahead and do that Grizzlies trade for you there, Sean. Let's go ahead and pull that one up. Let's clean it up here and go over to the Grizzlies and see what we could do. Now, I'm going to do this one with my Grizzlies hat on. So what could we do? Well, as far as the contracts, the only way I'm trading a Desmond Bane is if I'm getting a in their prime star player back. I'm not trading Desmond Bane. Jaren Jackson, I could entertain the idea of trading him just because he's getting close to free agency, but I'd have to be getting a big back in return that I like. Maybe Jaren Jackson would be the best piece of that deal. So just to kind of throw it in terms of what we've been talking about today, say Dallas was looking at Jaren Jackson as a difference maker for them. I would want Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford back in return. Maybe another asset like a 3-4 type of a player, a Najee Marshall, some first-round picks. But I don't think they're looking to trade pieces off of this roster to make themselves better. I think they're looking to add players that are better to this roster, not trying to divest some of that talent. So what could they add? Looking at the more reasonable trade pieces, Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard, Brandon Clark, Aldama, remember, they did some terrible contract maneuvering with him and are not going to be able to keep him next year anyway. The team that trades for him will not be able to keep him most likely anyway either. Why? Because that option was declined and limits you to what number you can actually give them in free agency. So if you're interested in Sandy Aldama for the future, you're probably not going to trade for him. But if you're looking to make a run this year and are okay letting him leave in free agency for literally nothing, Aldama could be a great fit. But that's a big piece that would be going out the door for Memphis. Maybe they just hold on to him. But those would be kind of your trade assets. Now, what could they add? Now, remember, they're a team that's been connected to Jimmy Butler. They've also been connected to Brandon Ingram. Let's go ahead and do Brandon Ingram because I think that would be a position of need for them. And I think they could sign him to an extension. Not at, say, $36 million, but say they offer him, say, 4 years at $120 total. That, I think, would be very comparable to what he could get on the open market. Now, what would you be able to trade out to be able to bring him in? Brandon Clark would be an interesting piece. They do need a little bit of size. Smart doesn't do anything for the Pelicans. Kennard doesn't do anything for the Pelicans other than the 1-year deal. So maybe this would have to be a 3-team trade that would include Marcus Smart. Bane should only be traded for KD. I wouldn't even do it then if I was the Grizzlies. Grizzlies will have a ton of cap space next season. They'll have a fair amount, I will say that. They have a good contract anyway for Ja Morant as their lead player. Desmond Bane at only $34 million, and at Jaren Jackson there. Now's the time for them to really strike while the iron is hot, kind of like how the Warriors did the year they brought in Kevin Durant. So maybe they try to bring in somebody else that way. So let's see here. Chester, not going to lie, this trade deadline is more interesting than the past offseason and last year's deadline. It's kind of been needed as far as the ratings for the NBA. They needed a more active trade deadline. Getting one of the most talented players in the NBA traded to the best franchise in NBA history, or most storied franchise in NBA history at least, in the Lakers, certainly should get things going in the right direction for the NBA. Michael, with how deep our rosters are in Oklahoma City, are there any young players that are willing to give up for a veteran like Jimmy? Not for Jimmy. They would do it for an impact player. I thought they should have tried to go after AD, but I don't think they knew AD was available for the right trade, and I think they missed the boat on that one. That would be one way to get it done there. Jonas is a king. Absolutely. Nets kind of look rough. Yes. Okay, let's try to catch up on these. Let's see here. Yes, that makes a lot of sense. Doncic was traded. Okay. Let's get back to making this trade. You're getting in Brandon Ingram. What would you have to give up? Marcus Smart makes the most sense, so you'd have to reroute him to another team. Pelicans aren't going to want him. So who would want Marcus Smart? You're looking for a guard who can play defense, ball handle a little bit. Dallas could be a fit. I don't think so. I think they're looking for a better scorer. So who could be looking for defense? The Bucks made a trade for Kyle Kuzma already. What other pieces do they have left that they could trade? Portis makes some sense. Connaughton makes some sense, but that basically takes away their depth. They don't really have a whole lot. So let's take out the Bucks. We know the Knicks like guards as far as pretty much anybody who can defend. I'm not sure how much he actually helps their situation, though. Magic could use somebody like this. They hoped for they hoped for better anyway from KCP, and it didn't really work out great. So let's say Marcus Smart goes to the Magic. What could they have to give up that the Pelicans would want? Expiring deals, young players. Maybe you trade Cole Anthony to the Pelicans, give them a point guard to really hope for. You trade Jet Howard to the Pelicans. Javonte Green kind of replaces Smart in the lineup. You trade him to the Magic. I think Scottie Pippen Jr. would be a great get for another team. I think he's got really good value for the Grizzlies, but I think you might have to include him for the trade here. Either that or you're going to have to give up some pieces. GG Jackson makes some sense. If you're bringing in BI and you're extending him, I think GG really loses some value here. So let's trade him to the Pelicans. Not a bad deal overall. They would still need to trade a little bit more salary here. 3-point shooting for Kennard. That's fairly close. And instead of a first-round pick, let's say they throw in second-rounders to the Pelicans, because I don't think this trade would warrant a first-rounder in return. So you send them 3 seconds. Let's try this trade and see how close we are. So a success, not too bad. So in exchange for Brandon Ingram, the Pelicans are getting Cole Anthony, Jet Howard, and GG Jackson. Grizzlies, meanwhile, are trading away 3 players, bringing in 2. The impact of Brandon Ingram offensively, I think, will be a big boon for them. I think they replaced the defense of Smart with Green. I don't think Kennard had much of a future there with the Grizzlies either way. For the Magic, they're giving up, what? A decent point guard, a former first-round pick in Jet Howard. They're bringing in Marcus Smart. Maybe you send another second-round pick from the Magic to the Pelicans, and then that finishes off the deal. Not too bad, though. Rafe, could you see any names getting dealt who are not expected? Like Woes, I didn't see that one coming, but makes a lot of sense at the time. I would expect a healthy number of those. almost all of those type of players I think will be traded tonight or in the early hours tomorrow. So that's something we'll keep an eye on during our MLB Live later today. Rockets could trade Holiday and Tate for Chris Paul. That's a possibility. They do need an upgrade at point guard as far as I'm concerned. Fred VanVleet has not been as good as advertised. But yeah, that would be a rough point guard mix there with CP3 and Fred. CP3 won't mesh with that group. They already have too many alpha dogs. Well, maybe the alpha dog, of all alpha dogs, and Chris Paul anyway, gets those other guys to kind of calm down, be the veteran in the room, the leader, and gets those other guys to settle down some. I don't know. It's a filler move, injury purposes. I think so too. As far as the Daniel Tice move, Grizzlies will lose Kennard, Aldama, and LaRavia this offseason. That's true. That's why I think I think that's why they go after him now and try to get that extension done. Get him for around $30 million, $32 million per season, and then go into free agency and see what else they can bring out. But this wouldn't be a bad deal. All right. Appreciate you guys joining us today. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Did a little bit longer of our live today as we gear up for the trade deadline tomorrow. We will have a live tomorrow detailing all the latest deals tomorrow about the trade deadline. Do some more trade talk, do some possibilities like this. But I appreciate you guys joining us. If you guys are new here, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Thank you guys for your support. We'll see you guys here in a few hours with our nightly MLB Hot Stove Daily live. Appreciate you.